present. Senator Bratton. Senator Black.
Here.
Is present. Senator Gannon. Is present. Senator McCreary. Is present. Senator Roberts. Is present. And Senator Schroer.
Here.
Present.
All right, we do have a quorum. We're going to hear 4 bills today. I'd like to go ahead and start with Senate Bill 436 from Senator Carter. Please come forward, and the floor is yours on Senate Bill 436.
Thank you for the opportunity to present this bill today. Senate Bill 436 is here. Actually, I'm Joel Carter, Senator from the 32nd District. I should have introduced myself formally. But SB 436 is about more transparency when it comes to Missouri's investments. The goal is to ensure that financial decisions are being made that bring the best returns for participants of these systems and are not essentially driven by other political agendas. In light of recent events that have taken place with Silicon Valley Bank and the President's recent vetoing of a bipartisan piece of legislation that sought to curb an ESG push, many are unsettled about what is taking place in the financial sector. Many states are weighing in regarding what direction they want their investments to take, and it's a conversation that Missouri deserves to have as well. With that, I would like to open my bill up for any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions for the bill sponsor? Senator Black.
Thank you. And Senator Carter, you and I discussed this earlier, and I think you remember in the office we discussed that I serve on the Mosers board, right? It's fiduciary representing the Senate. We discussed this a little bit on the floor yesterday. There's Senate from the majority party, a senator from majority, a senator from minority party, from the House. At this point, I don't think anybody has been placed on that committee. 2 of us left last year at the end of the year, so I don't think anybody's been assigned to it. So I want you to know where I'm coming from. Maybe not so much today at this point, Senator, but from the fact that I serve representing the Senate on that group. So I see this as a reaction, as you said, to things that are going on around us in the world, and some of us believe that shouldn't be the #1 reason why we do it. In Missouri, on the Mosers board, as well as other groups, I want you to know that we've worked in this very room. The Mosers board sat and had a long discussion that ended up coming with a policy, as well as something that we have chosen to do with proxy voters. We hire a group to make sure what you're stating, that our #1 goal is return on our investment, not some other political goal outside of that. We want to take care of the citizens of Missouri, both taxpayers as well as the people who do that. So I see the definition of financial included in this proposal. It appears to cover, just broad, we're going to continue to talk about that. So this is what you told me in there. But I do want to do this in the committee. It is so broad that I see as a fiduciary, after spending years on there, that we may have people that handle our money in the state decide we just want to raise our hands and don't want to touch it anymore because we don't want to end up in a lawsuit, or that would be the craziest thing. But then we lose some of our very good financial money managers that are making us. And for a person sitting on that board, I'm worried that at least the way this is written now, it's going to force us to change our investing policy that was put in place right before I came. Representative Fitzpatrick at that time instead of Auditor Fitzpatrick, and I was lucky. Most of the miserable stuff that took place right before I got there. But I think the group of us are doing the best job we can, and I don't want to pull that away and hurt our investments anymore. So that word financial, I just think in the future we're going to discuss about closing that down. It puts me in a position on that board as a fiduciary to say, well, even though I think if we invest this money over here, it's going to do us the most good, but it might someday. Take John Deere for an example. You know, you could look at John Deere, you could look at Pioneer Seed. I'm going to use my ag deals. I hate to bring up Smithfield in this group after earlier today, but they participate in Smithfield. Put tarps over top the lagoons, take methane, put it in the pipe, put it in the pipeline up home. They don't receive much money for the methane, but they receive a lot for what? Carbon credits, because people on the coast that I don't agree with, I don't think they're very smart, they're paying our pigs to poop,
Yeah.
produce methane. Would that be something that Mosers would never be able to do if they, forget Smithfield, if there's another swine producer, et cetera, wanting to do that and try to gain investment from those type of things? So I guess I'm doing way much more talking. I'll let you say, I don't think that's what you want, right?
No, and I think to your point, I really appreciate your investment of time and talent into addressing some of this with the issue with Mosers. We have met with a lot of the stakeholders, with the retirement funds and investors, and we are having further discussions about how we might be able to incorporate it. But what we do see across the nation, right, is a movement for ESG type investments, not necessarily because they are a good investment for returns, historical, traditional return and type investments, but are to drive more of a policy. And so we just want to ensure that whatever it is that we do in Missouri is benefiting our teachers and those people that have invested their money in them. So we are going to look at their, we're looking now at their investment theses and investment protocols to make sure that whatever it is that we do bring forward, Senator, is something that we can all agree on.
That is good, and you brought up policy, so, you know, I'm not going to read it here in front of everybody, make everybody have to listen to it, but I did bring our policy that it was a lot of discussion to come up with it on both sides of it, because there can be risk, as much as I hate to say this on microphone, me get it used against me later in my life, but I'll die soon. You know, it may turn to the point where, you know, John Deere does have that electric tractor. I don't think I'll be alive when it happens, but it does, and we're saying, oh, we're no longer going to be able to invest in John Deere or Tenneco, Kubota, et cetera.
And hopefully it's not because of a transition, right? Because it's a smart investment, not because it's a tax incentivized policy.
But
right?
some of our policy managers, just because it's not defined very strictly in here, are going to look and say, we don't want to touch it.
No,
that's what I want you to work with me to try to do it. And I want to make sure that we didn't have the policy that we had. So I want to make sure you see that. And I hope that other retirement systems in our state that we touch also think about, you know, we do need to look at a policy and make sure we don't get caught someplace where we're throwing money down a hole and we just keep doing it because somebody decides that tree needs to be there. Thank you.
So Senator, again, with most policy in this building, it is always a fine walk of trying to ensure that we do the best thing for those that we represent, but then also at the same time that there's not unintended consequences. So I'm very happy to have those conversations with you.
Thank you.
Are there any other mini filibusters for the bill sponsor? Senator McCreary.
But I feel like if you answer the question, you basically are saying you don't want to hurt any of our retirees, or they're talking about teachers or local employees or state workers. The way this bill is written, I don't see how we don't hurt people. I mean, I'm just being honest.
So this is we always start at a beginning point, right? As the bill is filed. Yesterday we had a lot of meetings with with the representatives of these organizations, and so we're in a really good place, I think, moving forward to try to alleviate any of those concerns.
So can you share with me some of the things you would like to do so that we're not, because I'm hearing we all represent retirees.
Of course.
And I'm not hearing from anybody that thinks this is a good idea.
Yesterday
love
was
to
full
hear-
of meetings, and so what we have agreed on is a couple of portions in here that we might be able to tweak some language. I'm going to let them testify, to their concerns, and I think that we're going to be able to tell you as well that we are working and conversing over this language, and hopefully, when we come back, we'll be able to have something that alleviates those concerns.
So you don't want to share what you're thinking right now, as far as how to not hurt retirees
Well,
with this
the
bill?
language, we're still working over the language, so I don't have something solid right now to give you, but when that does happen, I'm happy to bring it to you and to the committee.
Okay. So one of the questions I have, when I look at how you define where we are and are not allowed to invest money, it talks about emissions, greenhouse gas emissions.
Mm-hmm.
So right now in these indexes, like the S&P 500, which is where a lot of fairly conservative investors go, about 290 of those 500 companies have policies on emissions and disclose emissions. It's what they do. So explain to me how you think by limiting investment choices that you're actually going to be helping retirees.
Well, again, what we're seeing is the market, right? The market, some of these investments are now not about returns. There is a transition that's occurring where the market is now being driven by a policy, not by historical or traditional definitions of what a good return looks like. And so in reality, some of those investments might be jeopardized where they're not a high return rate.
Well, but you're contradicting yourself, because my understanding when I look at all the different retirement portfolios, they're not making decisions to invest in companies based on, they're making their investment choices on what makes the most money for the fund and thus the retirees. And so I just don't see how you can have it both ways, because the investors that are making investments for these funds are not looking at the S&P 500 and saying, let's find the companies that disclose their emissions and invest in them. That's not what they're doing. They're looking for the best rate of return.
Well, some of those investments are based on tax incentives also. So what you're seeing is a merging of policy and finance that we want to make sure that isn't just merging those two, that finance surely and purely is independent based on...
So then anything agriculture shouldn't be allowed to be invested in, because the agriculture industry is heavily propped up by subsidies and government interference.
You're misunderstanding what I'm saying, and maybe I'm not communicating it as well as I should. Is this a conversation? I mean, I'm happy to bring other language to you when we have
this
it.
is a public hearing.
Well, of
And so
course.
I'm trying to have a conversation, and I'm not necessarily, I feel like you're having discussions about this bill in private, and I'm not sure why we would have a public hearing if you're not willing to share some of your, share specifics about your bill.
Well, I think it would be helpful to have them come up themselves, and because they're here to testify as well. So they can come up and share their concerns and the conversations that we've been having. So instead of me doing that, it would be better heard from them.
Okay.
If you're willing to do that.
Sure.
Any further questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none. How many do we have that would like to testify on this bill in the audience, one way or the other? Okay. All right. Let's start with testimony in favor of Senate Bill 436. Please come forward, state your name, where you're from, and be ready. We have a very alert committee today.
I like that. I did wear black. I noticed that it was a dark day
I
on your
like the
tweet
vest.
earlier today.
I like the vest. Very good,
Red
Jewel.
black for you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jewel Paddock, registered lobbyist on behalf of Patriot Voices, a C4 that represents grassroots in Missouri that are very concerned about the financial implications of the decisions that fund managers are making on behalf of Missouri citizens. And in the spirit of the law, we think that the focus should be on the financial wherewithal of the investments, not the other things that may be going on. And to the two kind of examples that have been talked about, I don't think this will prohibit the fund managers working on behalf of the, or at least not the goal of the fund managers working on behalf of the state to invest in a company, say like John Deere, because they're doing something that's green, but they're going to invest in John Deere not because they're doing something that's green, it's because they're doing something that's making the company money, and therefore the investment is paying off for the investors. I think it's pretty hard to find a company today with a household name that isn't doing the kind of things that that they want to run in their ads, which is, you know, being sustainable, focused on the environment, but they're not in the business of making the environment better. The John Deere's in the business of making a better tractor, a better combine, a better drill, a better implement. And the fact that they also care about the environment is great, but we shouldn't be making our decisions solely based on their environmental or social or their governance structure. We should be focused primarily on, will that investment make a solid return at the lowest risk for Missouri pensioners and finance investments. So I think that's the goal. And frankly, there's lots of examples where that's not happening around the country. You could say that they're anecdotal, but when Wall Street and the New York markets are dominated by the largest funds in the world, are making decisions solely based on this, in many instances, it's only a matter of time if Missouri doesn't step up and protect our interests, that those larger funds, those larger states will dominate the markets to the point where we don't have a choice anymore. Missouri will be left to only follow what other states are doing because the marketplace will have completely drowned out the choices for Missouri investment. And I think we ought to join with other red states to make sure that our taxpayers, our pensioners, have choices that are based on financial decisions, not on the ESG decisions of the companies. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jewel. It seems to me that we've seen pretty widespread evidence that companies that start making decisions about their future direction forward based on something other than financial considerations leads those companies into trouble. And if we allow these pension programs to make decisions on something other than the actual fiscal performance, doesn't that seem like a bad idea that would create a vulnerability for our pensioners around the state?
It would appear so. I mean, I think again the focus should be on the return of investment, the sustainability of the company in terms of its financial wherewithal, the investments themselves, and I don't think there's anything wrong if the companies themselves do have whatever goals in mind, as long as the returns are there to be supported. But if you're not focused, if the companies that we're investing in or the funds we're investing in aren't focused on the returns, that's a bad investment for Missouri.
Have you ever made an investment based on something other than the actual historical performance of the asset in question?
I personally don't. And again, if individuals want to make those decisions, if they don't want to, let's give an example. Some people don't want to invest in tobacco.
Right.
They should choose not to. Mm-hmm. But if the state funds want to invest in tobacco because it returns 10% every year, I hope they do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Questions for the witness? Senator Black.
One question. I'm sure you are aware of the policy that we passed within Mosier's. What are the holes of us as Mosier's board members on passing a policy and trying to follow it compared to using law to do what I think is the same thing, but I may not understand where the loopholes are at that happen because of our vote?
First of all, I don't think that they have to be inconsistent. I understand that writing a law that can be implemented in a way that makes sense, because this is a complicated area of the law, is important. So if it's a perfect bill, I can't speak to that because I'm not a financial expert. But I think it's the same spirit. I mean, you happen to be on the board right now. The board could change. And so the policy is only as good as the board that's there currently. And there are many other funds, there are many other investments the state's doing, and so to the extent that the state law is necessary, I believe it's because the law itself would reflect the values of the public by their elected officials, and that would then be a guiding post for all investments. And whether your board changes or doesn't change in the future, the law would still be there.
Further questions? Senator McCreary.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. So in preparation for this hearing, I see in statute and policies, so it's kind of a belts and suspenders approach, that they are only allowed to make investment decisions based on return.
I
So-
believe financial considerations. I don't know if return was the answer. I think it's financial considerations.
So the group you're representing today thinks that that's not good enough. I'm trying to understand why both state law and policies still make you think that you need a bill like this, because it's based on return for the fund and thus return for the
Oh,
retirees.
you're asking, you think the current law in Missouri is adequate. I just don't, not to agree with that.
Okay, so you think that somewhere along the way that someone's violating state law or violating policies?
I'm confident there are fund managers operating in the country today who are disregarding the financial interests of the people they represent. And Missouri does not have a strong enough position to ward off against that. Do we have great boards? Sure. Do we have great people? Sure. But I think Missouri needs a strong policy against the...
And state statute is not enough, like you want this.
I think a stronger state statute is
Okay.
warranted.
Well, and the other thing, so you mentioned John Deere earlier. I mean, we wouldn't be allowed to invest in them
Because
because they disclose emissions. So that's my interpretation.
so does Exxon. So you're suggesting by your understanding of this bill that we wouldn't be able to invest in Exxon?
My interpretation of this legislation is it would result in a big universe of companies that that could be invested in, and that's concerning to me.
I don't concur with your reading. It's certainly not. I'm not speaking for the sponsor, but every major oil and gas and energy company
Right.
does what you're suggesting they do, and I don't think we're suggesting that we not invest in those companies.
Well, I stand by my interpretation of this language, and it looks to me that if a company discloses emissions, that we're not able to invest in them. That's my interpretation of this language.
Okay.
Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your
Thank you, Mr.
testimony.
Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm too.
We'd like to discuss the landfill issue real quick.
The whole hearing is coming apart at this
Very
point.
important to me as
Senator
well.
I was going to ask if you'd be favorable to an amendment, so, no, I think it's, your testimony, is very well received, and all these corporations, we hear the term go woke, go broke, and I think when we're dealing with public investments, that's the last thing we need to be doing, and we need to be solidifying into law that the people that are in charge of these investments aren't buying into this nonsense that is very pervasive across the landscape. So I appreciate you bringing this, Senator. Unfortunately, should we have to be doing this? I mean, shouldn't this be their fiduciary responsibility already? Yes, but I think we're to a point to where we have to solidify it even further into law. So thank you for bringing this. Thank you.
Okay, next up in favor of Senate Bill 436, please come forward, state your name, where you're from, and the floor is yours for 3 minutes. We're going to have to start enacting time limits on
Good
the
afternoon,
hearing.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, James Harris, representing the Opportunity Solution Project, here to testify in support. I'd first like to commend the committee member from Northwest Missouri for his work last year with Mosier's. I wish other state retirement funds or public employee funds in Missouri, loggers, the Highway Patrol has their own separate retirement fund. The retired teachers had adopted similar policy, and I think that's one of the reasons for this piece of legislation, to bring kind of a uniform standard. We have seen, and I think everyone's read in the Wall Street Journal or other publications, the growth of certain hedge funds taking positions and then pushing corporations to make changes. And that will have an adverse impact on shareholders, or whether it be the state, a retired teacher, et cetera. And so, I think there was a question earlier about what's the impact, if we can't invest in something. You're seeing multiple states are starting to say companies need to return to focus on shareholder return on investment for the shareholder. I think if more states act, you'll see corporations kind of pull back and go, maybe maybe we do need to get back to the basics on ensuring that the people are purchasing our stock, their shareholders, we're maximizing their return, because that's the whole purpose of that company's existence. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic. Questions for the witness, and a reminder, we do have to be out of here when session begins at 1, so I know there's probably a lot more feelings on that, but questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up in favor of Senate Bill 436, please come forward, state your name, where you're from. Let me rephrase. Is there any further testimony in favor of Senate Bill 436? Seeing none, how many do we have to testify in opposition? All right, let's go for first in opposition to Senate Bill 436. Please come forward, state your name, where you're from. There we go. Come on forward. State your name, where you're from, and the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, Mike Moorfield, Chief Counsel for PSRS Peers. A little bit of background on PSRS Peers. We are the Teacher and Education Employees Retirement System. As of December 22nd, we have approximately $53 billion assets under management. We are the 46th largest institutional investor in the United States. So here today, unfortunately, testifying in opposition to Senate Bill 436. As we said to the Senator's staff privately when we talked with her about the bill, the board and the staff have long shared concerns regarding ESG and social impact investing, and frankly, any investment that is not for the sole purposes of maximizing returns within prudent risk variables. That's why we have taken 2 steps to guard against those issues. For nearly 20 years, we've had a policy in place each year that is reapproved by the board that explicitly states our investments are only made to maximize portfolio returns within appropriate levels of risk and not to further policy goals. That is specifically in our investment policy every single year. So basically, that's the exact opposite of social impact investing. Further, we've specifically addressed ESG. We laid out in an investment policy that no weight shall be given to social, environmental, or political interests in any of our investments. Again, we are here to maximize our return on investment within prudent risk parameters. Additionally, regarding the proxy voting policy, we've done 2 things as a system. First, the board has approved a corporate governance-focused proxy policy that votes to maximize shareholder value. So that proxy voting is to maximize shareholder value, no other considerations. And second, in directly held securities, we vote all proxies in accordance with that proxy policy. So speaking to some of what the senators have said here, our concern is the language, given the broad nature of the terms, how the language is written, and then the treble damages penalty in the back of the piece of legislation. What we're concerned about is no investment entity or fund would agree to do business with PSRS peers. So thinking through that, what did we do? We decided, okay, let's try to model what a 60-40 portfolio would be for the system. So 60% stocks, 40% bonds, and then back test that over the last 10 years as compared to what our rate of return. So to give you some information on that, we ran that test, and the typical 60-40 portfolio over the past 10 years underperformed our portfolio by 282 basis points or 2.82%, which that translates to a $12.9 billion loss that the system would have incurred if we would have went to the 60-40 portfolio. Now, we didn't feel it'd be appropriate to do a forward look on a 60-40 portfolio. We feel like that would mislead the senator and mislead the committee in terms of what potential future returns would do. But what we did do is we modeled what a 1% reduction in our assumed rate of return would be. So we have a 7.3% assumed rate of return. Let's say we had to take that down to a 6.3% assumed rate of return due to what we think would be a limited opportunity for investments. That would be a $7 billion hit to the system, which would then raise the contribution rate for both the employers and teachers. I'm focusing on PSRS here, from 29.22%, they pay 14.5 each side, to over 40%, 20% on each side. So it'd be a 5% increase on each thing. So in summary, we understand the concern. We view our fiduciary duties as very simple, to maximize return. But unfortunately, what we're also concerned about is if you put language into law, it could potentially minimize our opportunities to work with our fund managers, to work with our investment partners, to produce that rate of return that we've enjoyed over the past period of time. So with that, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions for the witness, Senator Gannon?
Yes, I would just like to say thank you for your comments, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Missouri has one of the best teacher retirement systems in the country, and we don't need to be messing with it.
Appreciate your kind words. We do our best every day for our educators.
Thank you.
Further questions for the Senator McCreary?
So I just want a basic understanding of what would happen. So we've got.
Sure.
How many people are retired and are benefiting, they're alive and they're benefiting from?
So, yeah, our system comprised of both active members and retired members
Right.
is about 300,000.
Okay, so assuming that if your fund would take a hit of, billions of dollars, like you mentioned, would we reduce the benefits that these retirees are getting?
So in that scenario, the benefit structure is under state law. So what first would happen is every year an actuarial analysis occurs of what the assumed contribution needs to be. So that would therefore raise the contribution rate of active educators, active employers.
So it's not, so the retirees, eventually what they get would be decreased, but also equally important, the people that are actively paying into the retirement, they would have to take more and more of their paycheck would be going into the fund to
Right.
try to make up the difference.
Yeah, so we were fortunate that our investment program has us at 85% funded ratio, which is high as compared to other states
Right.
that you see. Anytime a system goes under stress and starts reducing it, that's when entities figure out, okay, what are the next steps, whether that's a change in the benefit structure, whether that's an increase in contributions, et cetera.
Okay.
So yeah, those were the numbers we try to run to give a sense of the committee of what we would be concerned about a hypothetical
Well,
loss.
I appreciate you saying that, because we also have debates every day in this building about increasing pay for educators and teams that support educators. So this is one of those things where we're not able to attract and retain the best and brightest in public education, but then we're also could potentially be creating a scenario where more and more of their pay would have to go into the fund to make up for the investment return differences. So thank you for the clarification.
No problem, Senator. Thank you.
Further questions? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. How many more do we have in opposition of 436? All right, let's come forward. We need to hurry this along because we have 3 more bills to hear in the next 30 minutes. So please don't cover any ground that's already been covered. Otto, you're up.
3 minutes or less?
Less,
You bet.
if preference, but the floor is
Mr.
yours.
Chairman, members of the committee, Otto Fajan on behalf of Missouri NEA, speaking in opposition to Senate Bill 436 as filed. The real expert and the real experts in the system already testified. We do have one of the best public pension plans on the planet in PSRS peers. The good news for you all, of course, as you heard, is that our system's already committed to the same policy. And the other bit of good news we can share is that there's legislation that's been filed, that's already had hearing and is getting consideration that addresses this topic in a way that it creates that kind of a statewide standard, but doesn't interfere unduly with the ability of the fund managers to do the sorts of investments that get the best return for our members. And that's really the reason for our opposition as it's filed is it would impact the ability of the system to make the best possible investments for the benefit of our members. That's the only reason. But we think that there is a way that you can resolve this by looking at, for example, House Bill 769, Bill Owen, really addresses this on a statewide basis, but doesn't create the same kind of concerns about interference with existing investors that are already doing the right thing. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr.
Don't forget to fill out a witness form. Further testimony in opposition for Senate Bill 436. Please come forward, state your name, where you're from, and the floor is yours for 3 minutes or less.
You got it. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Elizabeth Altoff. I'm with the Missouri Local Government Employees Retirement System. The Logger system provides retirement survivor disability benefits for approximately 850 local government units across the state, everything from cities to fire protection districts, soil water conservation districts, Senate Bill 40s, and the list kind of goes on and on from there. We are also in the unfortunate position of having to speak in opposition to 436 today. I'm going to kind of save some of my comments. I just wanted to very briefly share with the committee that the retirement system, the Logger system, is currently 96.5% pre-funded. Our investments remain in the top quartile decile of national pension funds in terms of performance. So concerns that that's not happening in Missouri. I just wanted to very briefly address the performance of the Logger system to that regard, and also share that the Loggers Board of Trustees also does maintain a policy that we update every year that does prohibit our plan from utilizing any environmental, social, or other other ideological criteria in making investment decisions. Our fiduciary duty to our membership is to produce the best risk-adjusted return for our members, and we do believe that we are accomplishing that. So again, I want to be very clear that we are fully in support of what we believe the spirit of this bill is trying to get at, but for the reasons I'm not going to relitigate for the sake of time, we have those similar concerns as well. So.
Excellent, and I appreciate that very much.
My pleasure.
All right. Questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Don't forget to fill out a witness form. Further testimony in opposition to Senate Bill 436? Seeing none, testimony for informational purposes only on Senate Bill 436? Seeing none. Senator, do you have any closing comments?
Sure, yeah. I think our desire in the spirit of this bill are about making decisions that are beneficial to all involved, and so I appreciate further discussion, and thank you for hearing my bill.
Thank you, Senator. This will conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 436. We will now hear Senate Bill 77. Senator Black.
I'll try to make up time since I took up too much of it earlier. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Rusty Black, representing 12th Central District. The bill before you, Senate Bill 77, affects the Missouri State Employees Retirement System, MOSERS, and the MoDOT Patrol Employees Retirement System, EMPERS. These two retirement systems cover our state employees and have been in existence since 57 and 55, respectively. Senate Bill 77 removes the MOSERS and EMPERS statutes requiring that the payment for each system unfunded liabilities, so many of you may know that, some of you may not know what that means, be determined as a percent of active member payroll. That's in statute today, one choice of the way to do it. The removal of this requirement does not obligate the MOSERS and EMPERS Board of Trustees, which we've spent a lot of time talking about trustees, to calculate the annual employer contribution in a different way than what it has been the past practice, but rather gives the boards the ability to consider other amortized methods relatively to the payment of unfunded liability. It's important to know that a level percent of payroll contribution incorporates a payroll growth assumption with an increasing covered payroll of active membership each year. In June 30th, 2009, MOSERS covered payroll was approximately $2 billion. Since that time, covered payroll has remained below the 2009 level with very low growth. When payroll is lower than expected, the system does not collect the entire annual payment of the unfunded liability. Again, this bill would simply allow MOSERS Board the ability to consider other amortized methods. I'd be happy to answer any questions. For those of you that just listen to that, know what it's like to sit through a MOSERS Board meeting for about 9 hours a day.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none. How many do we have that would like to testify on Senate Bill 77? All right, let's do supporters first. If you would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 77, please come forward, state your name, where you're from, and the floor is yours for 3 minutes or less.
I'll be very brief. Abby Spieler, Executive Director of the Missouri State Employees Retirement System, here to testify in favor of this bill. As the senator indicated, we are simply removing the requirement to use this amortization method. When we talk about amortization methods, we're really talking about how we're going to pay off the unfunded and the structure of those payments. We're not changing the liabilities or the unfunded liability amounts. It's just the structure of the payment. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions for the witness? Seeing none, don't forget to fill out a witness form. Next, in favor of Senate Bill 77. Any further testimony in favor of Senate Bill 77? Seeing none. Testimony in opposition to Senate Bill 77? Seeing none. Testimony for informational purposes only on Senate Bill 77? Seeing that we're hitting our groove. Seeing none.
Thank you, Senator.
This will conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 77. I will now turn the hearing over to the Vice Chairman, Senator Bratton, as we get to the last two bills.
Fantastic. Senator, we're going to go to Senate Bill 540. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. State Senator Bill Eigel from the 23rd State Senatorial District. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Senate Bill 540. Current law authorizes an income tax deduction for active and reserve members of the armed forces for a percentage of such taxpayers' income received as salary or compensation as a member of the armed forces. This act provides that the term salary or compensation shall include any signing bonus. So particularly what we're trying to impact are the signing bonuses that members may sign as a result of signing up or re-upping with the National Guard units here in the state of Missouri is primarily what we're targeting with this bill. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
So currently, what if a member was given a $10,000, re-up bonus? I guess what's the tax rate that they would be hit with currently?
Currently, there's none because that bonus is not under the definition of compensation as defined in current law. So it's outside the exemption. So that's why we want to add signing bonus language to that definition.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions? See none. Anyone to testify in support? Please come forward.
Good afternoon. My name is Larry Crowder. I'm the Executive Director of the Missouri National Guard Association and a former full-timer and a former commander of the Recruiting Retention Battalion with the state of Missouri. And I want to make sure you understand that when you're recruiting someone in the state of Missouri, we are in competition with what we call active component, Big Army, and we are in competition with the reserves in Missouri. It is your Missouri National Guardsmen that come to your aid in a time of flood, and time of snow, and a time of need. That's who we get. Currently, there's really not an even playing field because active component, when they bring out new programs, they start first. So we start from behind the power curve already. This bill would put skin in the game for a recruiter to look at a potential recruit and say, the biggest difference between us and the reserves is the fact that you won't pay taxes on your bonus that you receive. And then additionally for the re-enlistment bonuses, which are the bulk of the bonuses in Missouri, these are folks that have been in at least 6 years. They're typically at a higher pay salary that they've received from the federal government, and those are state dollars that just turn within the state of Missouri. And so we want to hang on to those, and again, if they're tax-free. And these dollars go to everything from buying a car they need, to buying tires, to buying a new house. I've seen it all in my time in the Guard. So, pending any questions?
Any questions? Senator McCreary, proceed.
I think this is a good idea. Can you just share, I have no sense of, are we talking like $100 or 10,000, like what's a typical amount that we would be talking about for something like this?
Yeah, so it's all over the board. A lot of it's based on what that person does for the military, based on the need.
Oh, okay.
I know I had a son that received $20,000 when he first joined.
So it's sort of like in corporate America, like if they're really looking for like a specific engineer, the signing bonus would be different.
Right, and then yes, so it also includes, there's a certain point in time when you've been in long enough where you will no longer be able to apply for one. I believe in the past that's been about the 10-year mark. But it's really based on the need. Every year what will happen, the Missouri National Guard receives, they have a list that they will send forward to say, hey, these are the 19 MOSs, the skills, the people that do things that we need to prioritize this year. And so it'll change.
Okay.
The dollars amount are, when the Army's full, it's low. When they need it, they throw money at it. That's the way they work. So.
That's kind of how it works, so
Yeah.
very good.
But I will say this, you're looking at, it's in the it's $15 to $18 million a year is the kind of dollars that we're talking. And again, those dollars just continuously turn in our economy. So.
Very good. Thank you for being here.
If you could, maybe let the Marine Corps know that there is a capability to do bonus. No, I'm just playing. Any questions for... No, thank you very much. I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Anyone else to testify in favor?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Philip Arnzen with the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I do actually testify in favor of bills sometimes.
What are my bills?
I know, one of Senator Eigel's bills. We just want to support the bill. We're constantly in competition with other states for military installments and military bases. That obviously we support our military, but that also helps the private sector as well by having more folks in Missouri and a lot of the components that come with having a military base located in your state.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone, any questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Anyone else to testify in support? Anyone to testify in opposition? Informational purposes only? I believe that concludes the hearing on 540. We'll move to Senate Bill 542. Senator Eigel as well. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. State Senator Bill Eigel from the 23rd State Senatorial District. Happy to present to the committee Senate Bill 542, which deals with vaccinations. Specifically, what this bill does is it would prohibit the governor or the Adjutant General from implementing a mandatory COVID-19 vaccination policy for members of the National Guard. Now, I want to point out that if in the event that those National Guard units are activated and become active duty units reporting to the federal government, this restriction would no longer apply while they are on active duty. So this is a restriction that would only be in effect while the units continue to maintain their authority under the state. So in a call up to, if they're deployed overseas and become active duty, this would be superseded by federal regulations. Even as much as it would be my desire to affect even the National Guard and provide this protection in the event they were active, I want to be clear that the breadth of this bill could not go that far. So this is just while they're in state, not activated by the president. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? See none. Anyone to testify in support? Anyone to testify in opposition? Please come forward. Anyone to testify for informational purposes only? Senator, any closing remarks?
No, I feel very good about the pace which we have picked up here. So thank you, committee members.
I believe that concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 542. I'll turn it over to the chairman.
All right. We have been granted a 5-minute consideration by the floor leader. So we have now 12 minutes to get through an executive session. So I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session. Do I have a second? I do have a second. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? We are in executive session. We are going to exec on 5 bills. 3 of those bills that we heard today, the 2 bills, 540 and 542 that I presented, in 77 from Senator Black, and also we have 2 other bills that we will exec, 114 from Senator Brown and 256 from Senator Bratton that we heard previously. So we will go through each of those. Let's start with Senate Bill 77 and make a motion. Oh, and just so you know, and I've already let Senator McCreary know, we will leave the board open until tomorrow morning because we can accept votes until that point to will potentially where they're turned in tomorrow. So there, you do have that flexibility, and I believe we have talked to each of the committee members to make sure everyone's comfortable with that. I'd make a motion to bring Senate Bill 77 before the committee for due passage. Do I have a second? I do have a second. This is the bill we just heard from Senator Black dealing with changes to the pension process. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'd make a motion to vote do pass on Senate Bill 77. Do I have a second? I do have a second. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Eigel.
Aye.
Senator Bratton. Senator Black. Senator Gannon. Senator McCreary. Senator Roberts. Senator Schroer.
By your vote of 6-0, you have voted to pass on Senate Bill 77. And now make a motion to bring Senate Bill 540 before the committee. Do I have a second? I do have a second. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? The bill is now before the committee. Senate Bill 540 is the bill that we just heard that has to deal with an exemption, a tax exemption for military members that redefines the definition of signing bonuses to be included in the same exemptions we see elsewhere in law. Is there any discussion on that bill? Seeing none, I would make a motion to vote do pass on Senate Bill 540. Do I have a second? I have a second, a third, and a fourth on that one, I think. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Eigel.
Aye.
Senator Bratton. Senator Black. Senator Gannon. Senator McCreary. Senator Roberts. Senator Schroer.
By your vote to 6-0, you have voted to pass on Senate Bill 540. I now make a motion to bring Senate Bill 542 before the committee. Do I have a second? I do have a second. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Senate Bill 542 is now before the committee. Senate Bill 542 is the bill that you just heard that has to do with vaccination requirements. It prevents during periods where the National Guard has not been called up under the jurisdiction of the President and the federal government to be subject to a ban and restriction on COVID-19 vaccinations. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'd make a motion to vote do pass on Senate Bill 542. Do I have a second? I do have a second. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Eigel.
Aye.
Senator Bratton. Senator Black. Senator Gannon. Senator McCreary. Senator Roberts. Senator Schroer.
By your vote of 5-0, you have voted to pass on Senate Bill 542. I now make a motion to bring up Senate Bill 114 before the committee. Do I have a second? I do have a second. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The bill is before the committee. Senate Bill 114 is the bill that we heard from Senator Brown that specifies that certain applicants for disabled license plates or windshield placards shall not be required to provide physician statements for issuance or renewal of the plates or placards. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. I would make a motion to vote do pass on Senate Bill 114. Do I have a second? Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Eigel.
Aye.
Senator Bratton. Senator Black. Senator Gannon. Senator McCreary.
Oh, there is.
Senator Roberts. Senator Schroer.
By your vote of 6-0, you have voted to pass on Senate Bill 114. I'd now make a motion to bring up Senate Bill 256 before the committee. Do I have a second? I do have a second. Those in favor of that motion say aye. Opposed? Senate Bill 256 is before the committee. This bill is from Senator Bratton that allows certain veterans to be issued hunting and fishing permits free of charge. Coincidentally, if we did pass an amendment onto another bill on the Senate floor that would allow every citizen to get hunting and fishing permits free of charge. So, Senator, do you have a substitute that you would like to offer?
I do have a substitute, I think. Was it not distributed? I thought I distributed it a while ago. If not, it's just some clarifying language on the National Guard definitions is all that it is to the underlying bill.
So it doesn't change practicality of the bill, it changes definitions of the bill.
Correct.
Okay.
Of the National Guard being able to obtain this as well. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions on the substitute being offered by Senator Bratton? Hearing none, would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the substitute.
Second. Those in favor of adopting the substitute, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You have adopted the substitute for Senate Bill 256. I would now make a motion to pass the Senate committee substitute as amended for Senate Bill 256. Hold on. Do I have any comments or questions? Hearing none. We have a second.
Second.
And Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Thank you.
Senator Eigel.
Aye.
Senator Bratton. Senator Black. Senator Gannon. Senator McCreary. Senator Roberts. Senator Schroer.
By your vote of 5-0, you have voted to pass on the Senate committee substitute for Senate Bill 256. What a great recovery, and I really appreciate the committee's patience. And with that, I would make a motion to go out of executive session and adjourn. Do I have a second? We are adjourned. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
Done.
What a great 20 minutes right there.
Present, or is he gonna change his vote later?
Whenever she is comfortable letting me know, we're going to just have her do that. So I appreciate her patience.